Welcome back to Divulgence, everybody. We got Adam from the Truth Desk and Habsburg Jawlly West in the house. What's going on, guys? Adam, it's so good to see you again.
You as well, sir.
Habsburg, how are you, my friend? Also good to see you, man.
Doing great, man. How are you?
Good. Super excited for this show. We've been kind of chit-chatting about some of the Epstein stuff and trying to dive a little deeper into the medical and the dental aspects of things. Obviously, there's links to dental and medical schools, affiliations with doctors and dentists, and of course, all the creepy photos of the medical equipment, dental chairs that we've seen. So we're going to pretty much get into all of that today. Habsburg, where should we start? I know we kind of went through, we're going to go through some of the doctors. Why don't we start with maybe the Columbia Dental School. That's a big piece as well.
That's a big piece. And I'll tell you, like, when I was doing my research, like you and I, we have made this whole list of all these doctors and stuff, and I got completely sidetracked from it, like, because I started going down this insane rabbit hole, and we should start with the dental stuff, and we'll get to this other stuff, but it's all about like anesthesia and using anesthesia to control consciousness and brain activity. I think that this is like major MK Ultra stuff, so the dental stuff is its own thing, but it led me on this like crazy path looking into like how Epstein was connected with the world of anesthesia and the study of like consciousness. So this is going to be a fun one to unpack.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I guess let's start with the dental stuff. So, yeah. I mean, I'll start by pulling up some photos of some of the just ridiculous let's see what's the best way to do this. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. Because there's obviously the room. Let's start with this one here. There's obviously the room with the masks, which is super creepy.
Yeah.
And it also has, here we go, sorry. And it also has a dental chair in it. Let's start with the masks, actually. I mean, there's obviously the things going around with like, oh, there's an eyes wide shut connection. Oh, it's, based on, it's a nod to like CIA face masks or something like that, but it could just be really creepy, ugly art. He did have a lot of that lying around. What are you guys thoughts about the masks? Because they're pretty shitty looking masks. Like in terms of like wanting to like actually be a face imprint or like a likeness of someone. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I think it has something to do with, I don't know if they were like to remain on the walls or if like whoever was doing like the dental work or, like administering like the drugs or the anesthesia was actually wearing those masks and like changing them out, like for somebody who's like under the influence of nitrous oxide. I'm guessing that like nitrous is one of the main things that they were deploying. But like that would be pretty disconcerting to like have somebody, show up with this like, false mask, in your face and then changing their faces every time you like open your eyes and, or just seeing, like these faces on the wall, I mean, depending on what kind of drugs they might have been given, like it might have looked like they were like coming to life or laughing at them or, you know what I mean? Like, some kind of like, effect that had to do with like the drugs that they were administering, because I think that was a really big part of all of the dental stuff, was the anesthetics, and really like using this to experiment on people's brains as much as in their mouths.
Yeah, that's true, man. And just kind of thinking back to like the eyes wide shut thing, that's pretty freaky too. So yeah, if you're like drugging some people up and trying to freak them out, like, yeah, that's a pretty good way to do it, especially if you're like trying to mimic some sort of altered consciousness or altered state.
Yep.
And it looks like they're on nice, easy hooks so you can grab them on and off. So,
yeah, it looks like, I mean, it looks like they're just ready to hop on
yeah,
and
you're
off,
right.
kinda.
You're right.
The one thing I will say too is, like we talked about last time, Jordan, there was that 5-week gap between his
Yes.
arrest and the raid on the island. So, like anything that we see from this, I always take as like it's the stuff that's there is what was allowed to be collected. So they
Okay.
clearly let that be collected. It's like, was it always up? Was it, one example of something that I did verify was always up is that picture of a baby holding an onion in his kitchen. Have you seen
Okay.
that?
I have. Yeah.
That was, I saw in one of the files, there was a picture of a girl that had a cake and that was in the background. So it's like, okay, that was always there. So clearly they didn't plant everything, but the when I first saw those masks, what came to my mind was maybe they're death masks, which a death mask was a thing that they used to do in like the 1800s. When someone would die, they would put like plaster over their face and create a mask of them. But I mean, that's just, it's really speculation. I mean, there's no context. I've never heard any victim accounts. It's creepy as all hell to have those masks up there. It's very creepy, and maybe that's part of the point of it. To just, you come into this room as a young girl and you look around and there's all these masks of these old dudes,
with a dental chair.
Yeah. Yeah. It could have been an intimidation thing. With Epstein was big on intimidation, power games, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And
I'm curious too what like the lighting was like in that room. In any of the pictures, does it show like any of the lighting fixtures, or like that's another thing that they could have been using, like strobe lighting, or like certain kinds of like lighting effects that would make those masks look like they were
Good point. But yeah, no, I'm not seeing any light fixtures. And yeah, Adam, just want to maybe you can I think you pretty much said it already, but just to highlight what we talked about last time, because that was a great thing that I learned from you. So props to you that there was that timeline that between his arrest and all the kerfuffle and the actual search and seizure of evidence. So yeah, a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to do whatever they needed to do to write or rewrite whatever narrative.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that we don't have a real FBI in this country. They're easily co-opted. You can see that from the Charlie Kirk case. You can see that from this. Even going back to older things like the Oklahoma City bombing. But the whole Epstein thing is really it's really in your face. They didn't seize the evidence that they saw at his New York residence, never raided his island, never raided his Palm Beach residence, never raided his Ohio house. French authorities didn't raid his Paris apartment until after his death. And Zorro Ranch, I believe I just saw a couple days ago, they're actually finally going out there, 6 years after the fact and looking for some, that email that said those foreign girls were dumped out in the desert. Not that they're going to find anything after, 6 years of the time to do it would have been, after his arrest, not now. But, and I'd love to get into too that, that like I was talking about how they literally built a barn with an incinerator outside of Zorro Ranch. The sheriff, I believe, voiced concerns about that. Like, hey, there's a barn with a double door system called a Sally port where you open one door and there's a closed door on the inside. And they had an incinerator there. So they were literally burning evidence there. And with everything that you hear about Zorro Ranch, the women giving birth there, possible human cloning. And here's one thing I hate thinking about this stuff, but one video I saw in the files was there was a very young girl who appeared to be. Now, a lot of these videos, the DOJ's actually chopped them up into 3-second segments. A lot of the Epstein files are like this, where they'll take one email and it's in there 15 times, right?
Right.
But they had this video of Zorro Ranch. You could tell from the woodwork and stuff in the background. And it was this very young girl who Epstein was like ringing a bell, and she was like crawling around. You can't really get a whole lot of context. It looks very weird, but it appeared to me to be like she was somehow like as terrible as it is to say, like a trained sex slave. And
Yeah, man.
I think that's what he was doing out there. I think he was getting young children and training them from the time they were first born, and then they would basically be, you could have somebody come in with their private jet and purchase one of these, essentially brainwashed sex slaves. And whenever the walls were closing in, and makes you wonder what was burning in that incinerator outside.
The incinerator and the storage units that were emptied out. And so many balls were dropped that seemed, they were not only dropped, but they seemed to be like spiked to the ground like a fucking football, purposely. Yeah, you're right, man. Like when it comes to the FBI, like how could you trust that? And especially with the actions of like Kash Patel, what he does now, very, very disconcerting and very, very scary.
Well, the FBI has been corrupt since the inception, since J.
Yeah.
Edgar
For
Hoover,
sure, for sure. Hoover himself was a fucking, a creep and an instigator and a collaborator and a high horseman. So yeah, he was nothing but drama and corruption. Absolutely.
Yep, and he trafficked in blackmail too. That was one of his big things.
That was his thing. He almost reinvented the term blackmail, man. Like he was ruthless. And especially to think that he was like a cross-dressing gay man.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly, yeah. You're gonna drop that?
Allegedly, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't looked into it.
I think
too
that's
much.
fairly confirmed. Definitely
Really?
gay man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
anyway.
He was definitely gay. He was definitely gay. Yes, that part.
He was working, and he was working on these compromise operations with Roy Cohn, who was Donald Trump's mentor.
Trump's mentor.
Yeah, in the blue room at the Waldorf Astoria. I mean, they'd have these parties, and Roy Cohn would host them. So
that's crazy.
Another great guy. But I think that there was, in terms of what was going on at Zorro Ranch, I mean, I think a lot of it also had to do, not just like obviously like breeding for, like programming sex slaves, but I mean, I think that they were doing, like eugenic research, like, like things like cloning, things like using CRISPR to, like that, Epstein funded, George Church's research on CRISPR. And, I think that they were making modified humans, possibly, using like Epstein's own, like genetic material as, like the basis, I mean, who knows? To me, it's kind of like, if y'all have ever seen the movie, Boys from Brazil, or read the book by Ira Levin, but that's kind of, yeah, I mean, it's kind of my, take on Zorro Ranch, is that it's like sort of like a Boys from Brazil type, operation, where they're like trying to, engineer, in the movie it was Hitler, but let's say, engineer like an Epstein clone, or, whatever. And then, like use them for, for programming sex slaves, or for harvesting organs, or for, I mean, they could have used them for anything. There could have been, who knows how many of these, children, creatures, whatever might have been produced. So I think there are a lot of layers to what was going on out there.
Very true. And I just want to point out too, for people watching, I'm usually pretty skeptical of things. I try and debunk everything before I'm a bit more critical with I love conspiracies, but I'm critical with it. But this Zorro Ranch thing is one thing that I kind of put off for a while until now. I'm pretty convinced that there was some kind of human breeding program going on there. And if you just look at too, like people say that people could have been trapped on his island. Well, I don't even know how far it is from St. Thomas to his island, but you could see St. Thomas. Like you could, if you were a proficient enough swimmer, you could probably make it. You could maybe yell at a boat that's passing by.
Sure.
Zorro Ranch was like 40 miles from a town with like 20 people. I mean, you are out in the middle of nowhere in the high desert. The temperatures out there can get up to 110 degrees. You're not making it but a mile maybe with, you can't just go walking. So you are effectively trapped if you were there. I mean,
yeah, it's a good point. I mean, they even at, Little St. James, I mean, over the years they would have like, Disney cruises would take like snorkel trips out there. Like people did come and go from there, I mean, it was probably more so than a place like Zorro Ranch, So
you'd be much more isolated and you'd feel much more trapped at Zorro. I guarantee you.
And like still in the area within like 100 miles, you're close to some like very strange stuff, like the Tridentina base where Scientology has all of its like underground facilities. Like Church of Scientology has the Tridentina base, which is like, I don't know, less than 100 miles from Zorro Ranch. And yeah, I mean, it's real crazy, what's going on in that, part of New Mexico. So, but well, yeah, a lot of it's enabled just by the fact that it is like, isolated and it's, it's remote.
A lot of those small communities are strange. If you get a community that's really isolated, they get incredibly xenophobic. And they just have a weird, especially out in New Mexico. I was a truck driver for a while, and I've been to these kind of places, and towns like that have a weird vibe. You feel like people are watching you everywhere, and they probably are.
Yeah.
It's just a weird vibe out there. That guy, what the hell was his name? The Toy Box Killer. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
He lived in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and he was like a park ranger, and he would like drug women at this bar, and he would take them back and like basically like tie them up and do terrible things to them. But he and all his neighbors were friends. So it was like the neighbor, their closest people around, you couldn't run to. And it's just not saying everyone out in New Mexico is like that, but I'm just saying those small towns out in the middle of the desert, normal,
you never know.
Normal people don't say, I want to go live in the middle of nowhere in the desert. I'll put it to you like that.
Well, there's also like tons of like historically like White Sands and like Alamogordo, all the Manhattan Project stuff that was going on in New Mexico, the Santa Fe Institute, which Epstein was funding, all of this, scientific research, the Hefter Institute, which is like a psychedelic research, institute that's in Santa Fe, that's connected with the Santa Fe Institute. Like there's all kinds of like, weird, spooky stuff that's been going on there for a long time, in New Mexico specifically, in that region. So.
Also, here's we got a comment from the audience here. Shout out, Make Me America Green Again. Engineering children to become future jet pilots, maybe. Nadia Marcinko, also known as Nada Marcinkova, is a Slovak-born pilot, flight instructor, and CEO of aviation website Avloops, now mysteriously not. That's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, even the thought of just building this kind of larger, very tight-knit, loyal group to Jeffrey or whatever other players were in the mix. Yeah, I don't know, who knows, man. Pilots and stuff that you need to know. You need to be able to trust that person completely, no matter what, right? So you start putting these almost like not a sleeper cell, but you put these kind of people in positions where if you need them to do something or just act accordingly, they will, no matter what, right? Out of loyalty. Maybe you don't even have to pay them unless they're on the payroll already, right?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as far as aviation goes, like there is a lot of like Air Force activity in New Mexico and like the Dulce base, like a lot of, UFO stuff, like alleged, I mean, it's Roswell. I mean, like there is a lot of like weird, connections to, experimental aviation and stuff in New Mexico. So I think that's a good point.
Well, there's not a lot of people around. I mean, that's why they had the Manhattan Project out there. It's the most isolated place probably in the U.S. So if you want to do something with not a lot of prying eyes, that's where you that's where you get. There's Zorro Ranch right there. The most disturbing of all of Epstein's properties. I'm convinced this is the most disturbing property.
Yeah,
I think it stands
a
to
good
reason.
case for it.
But it's interesting when we talk about the Manhattan Project because that will definitely connect to when we talk about Columbia, because Columbia University is where the Manhattan Project started, and that's why they called it the Manhattan Project, because Columbia is in Manhattan, New York. Like that is the origin, and they moved it out to New Mexico so that they could like operate with more secrecy. But yeah, it was from Columbia, so that will definitely tie in.
Good point.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty crazy.
So let's continue with a few more pictures here. Just getting into the dental chairs, the medical equipment, kind of helps set up more of our discussion here. So here we see bed, yada yada, and obviously in the back there, we see some medical / I mean, that thing could be used for dental. It could be used for wounds. That magnifying thing.
I mean, those are dental drills. Like that's definitely a dental rig right there. Right there with the cords. Those are drills.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that's absolutely a dental rig right there.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out.
And where does this come from?
That's from the bedroom, either in New York or in Palm Beach. But
and then here's,
I believe that would have to be Palm Beach because.
Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
I'm just saying, I bet that's Palm Beach because it doesn't seem to fit the aesthetic of his New York residence. That's Palm Beach right there.
Although I mean, he also had like other apartments, in New York for like guests.
Yeah.
I mean, he had an apartment in Paris. Like, I'm not sure exactly, which, residence that the bedroom one was in. That's definitely from the house on Palm Beach in the bathroom. But
okay. I almost thought it was the same room, but it might not be. So here you see the similar setup, but obviously if you look hard enough, you can see the chair in the back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is, very frightening. Very, very frightening. And a phone. Lots of phones around the house too, obviously.
And a plane.
Yes, right. I know. Yeah. Howard Hughes over here.
The little like setup that looks like that, but it's like the little more scaled down, more portable one in the bedroom. That one really freaks me out, dude. Like, it's so crazy that it's right next to the bed. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's scary as hell. Yeah. So and there's been photos of like girls getting some sort of medical treatment or being tended to in a bed. I don't know what kind of treatment they're getting, but I mean, that's just horrifying. So
I saw one thing where he denied medical treatment to like one of these girls wanted to go to a hospital and he was like, no, you're going to get patched up by somebody that I know.
Yeah. Of
you know?
course, absolutely. Makes total sense. So I'm going to go through, me and Habsburg went through some of his doctors. So, and like just the ones that we're able to get a hold of, there's a long list of. So there's a Dr. Bruce Moskowitz from Palm Beach, who's an OBGYN. Or no, sorry, he's not. There's Dr. Bernard.
I think Bruce Moskowitz was his heart doctor,
Okay.
if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. His
Yeah, I believe
cardiologist.
you're
I think so.
right. So he's in Palm Beach, and then there's Bernard Kruger in Manhattan. There's a Dr. Adam Romoff who works with a Dr. Susan Yale. I can't remember if there's one couple and the doctors are married, and then there's another one where they're, I think, brother and sister. So they're both OBGYNs in New York. There's Stephen Victor, who's a dermatologist. There's Dr. Windsor. Oh, yeah, here we go. Dr. Windsor Ting of New York. And brother and sister, or brothers with Dr. Jess Ting, who's a plastic surgeon in New York. This is my favorite one, Dr. Roni Shimoni from New York. And he... okay, and he handled the medical equipment. Yeah, so this was interesting. He handled the medical equipment at Epstein's properties. So that's an interesting name. There's Dr. Eva Anderson Dubin, Dr. Harry Finch, Dr. Peter Attia, who's been in like a lot of hot water lately. And then the Dr. Jeffrey Port, who also does investments with him. We also found Dr. Richard Axel, Dr. Thomas Magnani, who we're going to get into because he's a big dental guy. And then there's Mark Landon, Dr. Mark Landon from Ohio State. He's an OBGYN, which is concerning. And then Dr. Alexander Schifrin from Manhattan, OBGYN. So lots of OBGYNs, a few of them are plastic surgeons and dermatologists. So they're obviously good with wound care and skin and making sure girls are going to, even if they look all fucked up right now, give them a couple days, they'll be okay after we take care of them, kind of thing, right? And then, like, obviously the OBGYNs, like, super scary. And then we found some links going to interesting places like Ohio State. So why don't we get into a little bit with and of course Dr. Thomas Magnani, and he is also connected to Columbia. Is that right, Habsburg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an alumnus of Columbia, but he is also like an adjunct professor there, but was in private practice. He was Epstein's personal dentist in New York. There's like 3,500 like hits on Magnani's name in the files. Like, they're in constant contact, and he's the one who was really like Epstein's conduit into like the like the hierarchy in the dental school at Columbia and the medical school in general. Like, he connected him not just to the dean of the medical school, but also to the dean of the dental school, but also to the dean of the medical school, which is one of the biggest like top medical schools in the country. And so it's like Magnani was really guy on the inside at Columbia, but also like one of these kind of like celebrity dentists in Manhattan. So he figures in like real prominently, and it's just like it's insane how much contact they had, and how much time Magnani was like spending at Epstein's private residences. Like, he was coming over to have dinner at his house in New York, like just all the time. And like you can see it through the correspondence between like his secretary and Leslie Groff, and I mean it, like they're hanging out and they're bros. That is not just like his dentist.
Jordan, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thanks, sorry. So, like you said, there's I think I gonna butcher this probably. Letty Moss Salatinge. So that was the vice dean who Epstein bribed. And then there's Ira B. Lamster, the former dean.
Yeah, and he's actually still a professor at Columbia. He's just not the dean. Same with Moss Salentingen, or however you say it. Like, she got relieved of her administrative duties as a vice dean, but she's still a professor. So like none of these people, lost their jobs or lost their tenure. They're just not like
moved around a bit.
Yeah, they're just not like in the administration anymore. So also let's see, what's the other guy's name? Ronnie Myers. He's either the dean of the, I think he is the dean of the medical school there. But yeah, I mean, this was like, the whole like administrative, system of the dental school was like, in his pocket. He gave them at least like $210,000, that, was like directly from him, including, like a $50,000 donation to their annual fund in the name of Karina Sholiak. He gave them 50 when they like let her in. And for those who don't know, Karina Sholiak was, Epstein's like long-term girlfriend from Belarus, who it was like his primary beneficiary of his estate. She inherited some like $100 million or something, whatever he like basically had left over. And and she was a dentist, and she was like evidently not qualified to get into Columbia Dental School on her own. She was denied admission in 2012, and then Epstein via Magnani and Lamster and Moss Salentigen, like they got her accepted into the school, via like donation, bribes. And those are the ones that we know of, like on paper to the school. Like we don't know like how much money he like put in, in these people's pockets directly, right? Like, we don't know that he like didn't show up with like a duffel bag full of cash to, any of these, people, saying like, this, I mean, it's like, we really, have no idea that, like the real extent of his relationship with them. But I mean, I guess what's really important, like is that, yeah, I mean, she had this like very, kind of like white glove experience with Columbia. They really like took care of her. There's another doctor there. Oh, what's the guy's name? Starts with an L. I can't find it in my notes, but something like anyways, he was one of the professors, but he trained her and like got her, like private like lessons for her her like practical exams and stuff like that. Like he was like teaching her like on the side. So she had like like I said, kind of like a white glove like experience there, where everybody was just kind of like trying to get her through, the dental school there. And is interesting too that so, and I had posted about this on my Twitter page, a couple of weeks ago, but it was really weird that Magnani was class of 1980 at Columbia, and he I found out that, and we've talked about Owsley Stanley before, like in the episode that we did about the Grateful Dead and stuff like this, but he was, like the underground, LSD king of the 1960s. He made like all the acid that, turned everybody on, and the Haight-Ashbury and, Woodstock and everything like that. That was the Owsley acid. And his like common law wife, who like had his, his son, her name is Roni Jissen Stanley. She was after she broke up with Owsley Stanley, she went to Columbia Dentistry School, graduated in the same class as Tom Magnani, and like her mentor. Because I found the articles from Columbia's alumni newsletters, in which they like brag about like, oh, Ronnie Stanley was, making, LSD and, hanging out with the Grateful Dead. Like this is in the Columbia's, alumni publications, but that her mentor was this Letty Moss Solentigen, who was also the mentor and, interacted directly with Jeffrey Epstein, but there was the direct mentor for Corinna Shuliak. So it's really weird, that you have this like multi-level connection with, somebody who definitely has like MK Ultra ties, with LSD, with the, underground manufacturer and distribution networks, and, Columbia University and their dental school, and like these specific characters that were tied to Epstein. It's really very, very crazy to me. So just thought I'd mention that.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
But like in their like alumni newsletter, like you should, we could probably pull it up, but if you like Google search Roni Stanley and Columbia, but they're like bragging about how she was, making acid with Owsley Stanley, like on their official alumni newsletter. It's unbelievable. So interesting.
Well, and Epstein himself, he has so many ties to these prominent universities, Harvard, MIT. He's donating. I mean, he donated, I forget, if you look at that, he had a bunch of websites like jeffreyepsteinscience.com, jeffreyepsteinblog.com. You can find those websites on archive.org. And one of those sites said he was giving, I think it was $100 million a year in the form of educational grants. And like, that's one thing, like people want to focus on the sex crimes aspect of this. Like, okay, yes, he was a high profile pimp. That's known. But it's like another thing that he was doing was he's a, I forget what the word is. He's a contact asset. Basically, like if an intelligence agency wants information or they want something from somebody like, say, Prince Andrew or Bill Gates, like the CIA or the Mossad can't just approach Bill Gates. So tell them to go fuck themselves. So they use somebody like Epstein who knows all these people already. And that's what his role, a lot of people suspect, that's what his role was in the education world. Was, hey, give out these grants and stuff, get to know people, stay on the cutting edge of research. He was super into physicists. He had physicist summits at his island.
People. He liked all these smart, different people, celebrities.
He was really into transhumanism. I mean,
yeah, that's a big one too.
Yeah. And these intelligence agencies love to stay up on the cutting edge of technology. And that could have been one of his main roles, was to just harvest this information from, people like Stephen Hawking and other prominent physicists through educational grants.
Well, they gave Hawking what he wanted, apparently.
I think not just like harvesting the information, but like, having an influence in the like nature of, the research or, like the development of technologies, and, saying like, this is how we want this to work. And, this is what we're thinking. And, if you pursue these kinds of things, like I'll fund, this kind of stuff. And, but yeah, I mean, and the, like, again, like the funding of like the physics research and the like the quantum stuff, like it starts getting into all of this like consciousness research that he was funding, and which has this direct link in with this anesthesia, and we can get into that here in a little bit. But I mean, it's unbelievable how all of this stuff, and it's all the same people that are connected with like science, technology, research, drugs, like mind programming. It's it's like these closed loop networks. It's unbelievable. So
Yeah, and he could also be asking some of these people for advice for his own little experiments, right? So we've going back to some of the stuff we were getting into. There's the medical equipment and the dental chairs. So through all of our looking, we can confirm that we know of at least 2 dental chairs, one on the island, one Palm Beach. And then there's, tons of different pictures with various medical equipment and whatnot. And then another thing to note, which we're going to get into with like anesthesia and stuff, like all this, he had all this nitrous oxide too, right? And
really?
all these, masks and stuff to give put people to sleep, or who knows what he was doing with it, and who knows what other like drugs he was dealing with. Me and Habsburg were kind of bouncing some different ideas of like what's with all the dental stuff. It's definitely more than just like practice for his girlfriend. We kind of bounced the idea of changing dental records, changing identities, and then Habsburg was said an obvious one that I, for whatever reason, didn't think of right away, but torture, right? Pulling teeth, drilling teeth. You can do, if you've seen The Running Man, The Marathon Man, way better movie. You can really do some freaking damage with a drill or with whatever when you're poking into teeth or nerves or cavities or roots and nerves. And yeah, it just makes me squirm thinking about it.
And most people have fear-based responses to like dental visits and stuff.
Yeah,
that's
it's a general
more so than any other medical profession or anything like that, because like your teeth are like the closest thing. Your mouth is like right next to your brain. Like any kind of pain or any kind of sensation that's going through your like dental nerves is going like straight into your brain. It's scary, and it's so painful, and it's something that we're talking about for since like time immemorial, that people have used for like coercion, like literally, like they say, like, oh, it's like pulling teeth, like that's what they like mafias and criminals do to extract information. Like they get into your mouth, they'll pull your teeth out, they'll break your teeth, like things like that. That's like, that is torture. And yeah, I think that like using those dental drills and things like that's a way of like getting information to also to like control people's minds and say, okay, we're gonna do this to you, we're gonna scare you, this like trauma-based mind control, like literally using like dental implements and stuff like that. You got like Dr. Giggles was another like Hollywood movie, right? With the psycho dentist. But there's and then there's like the whole world of dental implants, right? We're like, we know that the CIA has historically used dental implants, and like recruited dentists to do stuff like Dr. Giggles. You remember that movie, Dr. Giggles?
My bad. Sorry. I'm like, what's with all these wieners? All right, Dr. Giggles.
Yeah. Anyways. But yeah, they're creepy, dude. It's scary stuff. And so like, but they use like dental implants, is like to transmit like radio signals, to like use as like listening devices, as tracking devices. Like before everybody had a cell phone in their pocket, they were using like dental implants to, to use as like, tracking devices and stuff like that. So, like
That's an interesting point. I never thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, and not just tracking, but like, to send like radio frequencies or other kinds of signals into a person's mouth that you could like actually, like hear, like inside it, like the voice to skull kind of stuff, in getting a signal in your teeth is like, something that you can like auditorially hear. But also if it's like a two-way transmitter, they could put some kind of like listening device into your teeth and be able to like hear your conversations too. Right. So, like it's like these dental implants have been a real serious like technology for, gaining information, from through like intelligence networks. And that's something that, we would have to consider in this case too. Like, why are these people so, interested in dentistry? Why is he trying so hard to get like his girlfriend, his like person that he trusts probably as much as anybody, like including like Ghislaine Maxwell, like into, like dental training, like some like his most trusted asset, becoming a dentist. Like there's really something there. Like why are they so invested in that? So, and then there's the whole aspect of like, the drugs that they use, anesthesias, but also like, the benzodiazepines, painkillers, things like that. Like, they get people like really drugged up and in a highly suggestible state, to perform dental procedures. And so, like this is a, like a conduit, a pathway for like, mind control, mind programming, is using these drugs. And so that's that's another really big part of it. And that's what got me into this research about Epstein's connections with anesthesia, specifically as relates to like the study of consciousness. And like I will hold off until you guys are ready for that. If see if you guys are have anything else you want to add.
No, let's jump right into it, man. And
Well, I just want to say,
go ahead,
yeah,
Adam.
I want to say on the dental thing. So, the point about the dental implants possibly being tracking is interesting, or the listening of conversations, or maybe as a receiver to play messages in someone's head. Again, I do say that I am pretty critical of stuff. And in my opinion, a lot of times the simplest explanation is the most likely. A lot of these women that Epstein would collect, these young women, came from poor backgrounds, and they were probably women that didn't go see the dentist a lot. And his clientele are really rich, snobby people who probably wouldn't want a chick that had bad breath, or I think these dental chairs could just be, he could have just been doing dental work, really. Because, or another thing I thought too is maybe he was adding braces, right? Like you get someone that's kind of young looking and then you add braces and it makes their marketability go up.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You could be doing all of this shit, right?
Like what Habsburg pointed out, his girlfriend was a legit dentist, Karina. She was a legitimate dentist. So I think part of it could be dental work, but again, we don't have a lot of information, so all this stuff's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there are, like the practical, like actual dental procedures, but like I've also seen, like emails with Magnani's office and, like the time slots that they are allotting for like dental cleaning, like multiple hours and things like this. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can see this, it'd be like, oh, we're going to, do like a cleaning and, we blocked out like 3 hours for it and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that doesn't take 3 hours.
Do like 10 cleanings in 3 hours or more.
Yeah, and we're gonna do sedation, and we're gonna do, it's like it's hard to know, and like I just there really is like a long history of these like dental procedures as like torture, information gathering, things like this. I mean, it's it goes in so many directions, but ultimately, I think that one of the really important things is like the administration of anesthesia, and that's like something that they're licensed to do, and that they're like that's like a big part of the dental practices. And that Epstein turns out was like funding research into anesthesia. He was working with this guy who's really very interesting. His name is Stuart Hammeroff, and he is the director of the Center for Consciousness Studies at the University of Arizona, which is actually like part of the Department of Anesthesiology, the Center for which is a real crazy thing to think about, that like, the Center for Consciousness Studies is under the umbrella of the Department of Anesthesiology. And that's because of this guy. He's written all these papers and done all this research on how like understanding anesthesia is actually how you understand consciousness, because you are able to, through anesthesia, you're able to like shut off the conscious mind, but the brain is still working, and you're you're still using your unconscious mind, like how you are in like dream states and stuff like this. So they're able to like induce this and be able, and it's like an easy access point to be able to like program people when they're under sedation. And he actually started this Science of Consciousness conference, and they actually just canceled their 2026 Science of Consciousness conference, because everybody that was involved with the conference was compromised by Jeffrey Epstein.
By Epstein.
I'm dead serious. This is I can actually, if you want to let me screen share,
please do.
Check this out.
That's a great headline.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. So this is through the University of Arizona. The Science of Consciousness Conference for 2026 has been canceled. We regret to inform you that the 2026 the Science of Consciousness Conference, scheduled for April 6th through 11th at the Lowe's Ventana Canyon Resort in Tucson, has been canceled. But if you go on Stuart Hammeroff's Twitter page, like he specifically says that the reason that they canceled it was because of everybody's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So it's just like
I believe it, because he was so involved in funding universities, and he was super into consciousness. That's transhumanism. That's one of the most documented things about him, and these educational grants that he would give out.
And so that's what's so interesting, specifically about this, in terms of studying consciousness, that it was like so tied in with anesthesia, which is again like so tied in with the like the dental stuff. It's really crazy. But this was so, and in this Science of Consciousness conference, I mean, you had like, this is Deepak Chopra was involved, Roger Penrose, who was like a physicist, like who partnered with Stephen Hawking, in his physics research. And we know that Stephen Hawking was going down to the island. But this Roger Penrose, who is like a knighted, by the British Crown. He's a knight. He's like 94 years old. He's also a fellow of the Royal Society, and he's written all these papers on quantum consciousness with Stuart Hammeroff, the anesthesiologist. So Epstein was giving a bunch of money to the Roger Penrose Institute, and I want to find this from this Hammeroff guy, and because hang on just a second.
Yeah, man. Just by going through these photos, like, it's so obvious that like how they're grouped together. It seems like they've clawed so much back, and they're just like, okay, we'll give them a bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So can I share this now?
You just got to pull that one down and then
stop screen. Right.
There you go.
I'm getting better at this.
Oh, buddy, you're my boy.
But okay, so this is the guy. This is Stuart Hamroff, right? And
just zoom in a bit so people can see.
Oh, sorry,
if you can.
I don't usually use Twitter on my desktop, so I'm not really sure what I just did. Here we go. All right, so this is him. I'm a retired anesthesiologist and professor and active consciousness researcher at the University of Arizona. So he's the one who
you have the tweet?
Yep. Yeah, hold on just a second.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see like me, typing this in and?
Oh, buddy, we see it all.
Yeah,
we're on your ass, boy.
So, from Stuart Hamroff. Yeah. So, with great regret and contrition, I confirm cancellation of TSC 2026. The University of Arizona and conference organizers have determined this is necessary due to several speakers and organizers, including myself, being mentioned in the Epstein files. All right. In 2017, I obtained one-time funding for a TSC conference in San Diego. It was $50,000 from Mr. Epstein. I deeply regret that and apologize to Epstein survivors, those horrified by his activities, TSC participants, and my colleagues at the University of Arizona, especially the Arizona Astrobiology Center. So, wow. He's involved in the Astrobiology Center. That's like the study of extraterrestrial life. Like, this like goes into all these, different, areas, but, yeah, he Hamroff is like, yeah, he funded me one time. Yeah. He maybe like funded the conference one time, but they were like exchanging emails, and making connections. Hamroff and this guy, James Tagg, that was one of his, like partners, they were inviting Epstein to these like, robot heart, like Burning Man parties, that they would have like, like, do you know what Robot Heart is? Like one of the big Burning Man camps. They were like hosting parties, that they were, like inviting Epstein to, weird stuff, like where they're obviously like having big, like psychedelic drug parties and stuff like this. But, Yosha Bach was also, like involved. He was one of, but Yosha Bach, who was like, one of his guys inside of the MIT Media Lab, was, part of this, the Science of Consciousness conference. Ben Goertzel, who we talked about in the Martine Rothblatt episode, who is like on the board of directors of Terrasem and is one of on the editorial committee of the Terrasem Journal of Cyber Consciousness, who was one of the ones who wrote the AI programming that Hanson Robotics uses for like the Sophia robots and like all of these like humanoid robots. He was one of the speakers for Science of Consciousness conference. Like really, creepy stuff. It gets into everything, the AI, the robotics, the astrobiology, everything. So it's really crazy. And when I started pulling this thread of like the dentistry and the anesthetics, it started connecting to all this stuff. And then he was also like in the Science of Consciousness conference, they started, they were having programming on transcranial ultrasound. And so like in some of these, pictures, it looks like Epstein had ultrasound machines. Have you guys seen that? And so it's, everybody's like,
that's weird.
thinking that, well, yeah, that it had to do with like, reproduction, and it probably did, but also these guys who are, studying like anesthesia and consciousness are using ultrasound, to like transcranial ultrasound, using like the ultrasonic frequencies that these machines make to like scan brainwaves and to like influence brain patterns and stuff. And so like there's that too. And there were I looked up transcranial ultrasound in the files, and there were there's a meeting set up at one point in 2017 with Bill Gates and Larry Cohen to focus on ultrasound, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So like this was going all the way to the top with that stuff. Yeah. So anyways, just that's kind of where I started going off with all of this, like medical dental stuff, is like it starts getting into this like mind programming, and that's what these guys are interested in, and so it's pretty interesting. Sorry, I don't want to like keep going on. I want to give you guys a chance to talk. So
no, that's cool, man.
I did see that in one of his emails, he emailed someone and said, "Do you think we should build a mind reader?"
Do you remember who he was talking to?
Oh Lord, I'm gonna
see. I think that's what they were doing. I mean, I think they were like doing that with the drugs, with the like these machines, like the dental hypnosis. Like I think that's what they were, like like getting into people's minds.
He sent it to Barnaday Marsh. Should we build a mind reader / use de-encryption? New understandings of the brain. Can we evolve the New York Academy of Sciences in one of our projects? I think it would be good for you as well as them. So we do a project on tissue regeneration, cloning. I'm excited to accompany you as a voyeur on Madron's adventure. Barnaby Marsh.
Barnaby Marsh. So he's an important person in all of this. He was running the John Templeton Foundation, and this is like a nonprofit NGO foundation that funds all kinds of like new agey, like consciousness, scientific research. He's a Rhodes Scholar, Barnaby Marsh, and his father actually was roommates at Harvard with Andrew Weil, who is another one of these, like, I mean, you guys probably know who he is, real famous like psychedelic researchers, who's also at the University of Arizona, who's also an advisor on the science of the Center for Consciousness Studies with Stuart Hameroff. They're real connected. So all these people are like in this tight circle. But Templeton Foundation, they're also funded and like co-fund projects with the Fetzer Institute, who also funds this Science of Consciousness Conference and the Center for Consciousness Studies. The Fetzer Institute is another one of these like new agey like super well endowed, like they have an endowment of like hundreds of millions or like billions of dollars, and they work with the UN, and they're the ones who like invented social emotional learning. Barnaby Marsh. So yeah, he's a Rhodes Scholar, which I mean, it's that's pretty high level stuff in terms of like round table, like CFR, Chatham House, like they run the Rhodes Scholarship program. So like that's a big deal. And and so his father was roommates with Andrew Weil at Harvard, Barnaby Marsh's father. And so like all of these guys are like just completely interlocked. And so so Epstein is talking to and Epstein was working with Barnaby Marsh to get the Templeton Foundation to fund also the activities at the MIT Media Lab. So he would like, obviously Epstein gave them a lot of money, but he was like recruiting a lot of foundation. He got Bill Gates to give through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to the Media Lab. He got, Templeton Foundation. But that another crazy thing that I found, going back to Media Lab and dentistry, was in 2002 at the MIT Media Lab in Europe, which I believe is based out of Dublin, Ireland. These guys were working on making a cellular dental implant that would be like a smartphone in your tooth through the MIT Media Lab in Europe. So,
Sketch.
I don't know if Epstein was funding that, but it's just another one of these things where it all seems to like tie together. Everything that they're doing, all these people and all these technologies and stuff like this, like putting things in people's teeth into their brain, making mind readers. It's so funny when you read that email that it happened to be from Barnaby Marsh, because like
it was to Barnaby. It was to him. It was Epstein
right,
talk. Yeah. Very weird.
But this is like the same network.
Here's another thing I want to, if I could share my screen here. I found this in the files. Habsburg, I think you'll think this is, let's see if I can share screen here.
Oh, maybe I need to stop.
No.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a conversation. Can you guys see it?
Yep. Just zoom in a bit.
So here's a conversation between. All right.
If you're able to. Beautiful.
So this is a conversation that Epstein, I guess he recorded, but he's talking about a previous conversation that they had. Epstein says Katie Couric was here and we were talking about ... I think I want to start cloning things, me and with certain people. Prince Andrew got upset because he was all, if it had a conscience, could we kill it for the spare parts? And I said, I'll make it without a head. Would that make you feel better? And Katie Couric, I thought, was going to vomit. So he's talking about a conversation. Yeah, isn't that wild?
Boom, bitch.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Holy shit, dog.
This
conversation
seem like he's joking at all. He's just like he's bragging.
Who is Richard that this conversation is with? Do we know?
Who's Dick?
Yeah. Where's your power supply?
This is a transcript of a conversation involving Jeffrey Epstein, Richard, Jessica, and others. The discussion covers a wide range of topics, including biological systems, viral replication, competition, survival, philosophical questions. I mean, I've read most of this. It's all fucking over the place. It just says Richard.
Richard Branson.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to think of who.
Richard Branson. That's a good
one. Another island guy,
Richard
Island boy.
Richard
Kahn,
that's
his
served as
accountant.
his longtime accountant. Richard Branson, associate. What else? What do we got here? Richard Kahn, Richard Axel, Richard Branson, Richard Caring. No.
It appears Richard appears to be in the sciences. He would be somebody that's involved in sciences. But I thought that was very interesting when I read that he's Epstein's just like, oh yeah, we'll just clone something and we'll not put a head on it. And I mean, this gets into some real dark. And Katie Couric was present at this conversation, allegedly.
Right?
With Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
With Prince Andrew. Yeah, exactly.
Katie Couric, Prince Andrew, and yeah. But to Couric's credit, it seems like Katie Couric wasn't on board with the unethical things they were talking about.
True.
She was there for some reason.
She was there though.
Unreal.
Yeah. Well, and Epstein was, the whole human cloning thing was really popular in the late 90s. And then I think Bill Clinton signed a bill that put the axe on, human cloning in the US. But It makes you wonder if it's not still going on at some of these private labs. You know, people like Epstein that are super into this stuff fund these unethical scientists who,
There's 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 people who are so passionate about science in a bad way, in like a bad way, in the sense that like they just don't give a shit. They just want to see science improve, or science do something it's never done, or prove someone wrong, or prove the world wrong, or whatever it is. Yeah, these like mad scientist kind of people definitely exist.
yeah,
Like you can
Joseph
kind of
Mengele
see,
types.
yeah, you can almost say that in a way Musk is that kind of person. He just pushes, and when people say like, hey, you need to calm down, he like pushes extra hard to try to prove a point, I guess. But yeah, you know, he's a little autistic too, I guess. But yeah, so
But he was, I mean, Elon Musk was definitely involved in, these network, and, the Edge Foundation network, that
yep.
Epstein funded with John Brockman. But I found another one today that he was involved in that I hadn't heard of. I know that y'all probably know this guy who is, also involved with like consciousness studies and he's like an astrophysicist, also in Arizona, but at Arizona State in Tempe, Lawrence Krauss. And he was running this Origins, let's see, this was the Origins of Human Uniqueness conference, and he put Epstein on the like advisory board, the external scientific advisory board for this. And let's see, it's got the Origins External Scientific Advisory Board also includes Elon Musk, CEO and CTO of SpaceX, chairman of SolarCity, CEO of Tesla Motors. So that's pretty interesting. This is like a direct connection of an advisory board that they were on, via Lawrence Krauss, who was also like a big sex creep, and got like kicked out of Arizona State for being a sex pest. But that's another interesting, like, they were sitting on this same board together, like that. I hadn't never heard of anybody mention that before, and I thought that was a really interesting find, him and Musk.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then and also John Mather is the senior astrophysicist of the Goddard Space Center, which is part of Columbia University. So there's all of the, they're all like tied in together. Another guy from MIT is on this advisory committee. I mean, it's just,
another interesting thing, because we're just kind of making some
Stephen
comparisons. Oh, there you go. I think he was mentioned in the chat as well, but there's also another guy with an island who's into like transhumanism and wants to live forever, is Peter Nygard. He's in jail in Canada now. But yeah, he was also like, I mean, if you kind of take away all the contacts, and yeah, very similar to Jeffrey Epstein in many different ways. So it's I guess that's something we got to watch out for when people get too rich and they buy islands and start running these crazy cults and just do these damaging things. It's unbelievable.
Have you seen that video with Peter Nygard with those, like,
which one? When he's asking to buy.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, he's like, this works best with like black women, and like the dark black skin, and like you'll make the best like products. You've seen that video, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've seen quite a few Nygard documentaries. So yeah, let me see if I can find it real quick, because that's Oof.
Have you guys ever seen the there's a guy who basically he was like really prolific with donating to sperm banks, and he's got like thousands of children. There's a Netflix documentary about him. In that, what I found was really interesting was he went to somewhere in Africa and it's like this place in Africa would pay white people to go and donate sperm. They would put you up in a hotel, and it just makes me wonder who the hell in Africa wants white sperm that much. It makes me wonder if that was some sort of, and I want to do some investigation into it, because I wonder if that facility was involved in, maybe some kind of human breeding or something. Because if you were going to do something like that, something unethical, it would have to be in probably some sort of African country. I mean, you couldn't set that up in the United States, or,
No. Yeah.
Britain or
He
somewhere. You'd
was-
have to go.
Go ahead.
I mean, you'd have to do something like that somewhere where, you could maybe pay some bribes. And it's just really weird to me that people in Africa would want to make a mixed baby, essentially,
Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. He was part of a group of like a few of these, like, I don't want to call them influencers, but that's what they do, is they see how many people they can get impregnated, and like there's a group of them that focus specifically in Africa. So yeah, I would love to do something on that kind of shit. So we should talk about that, because I watched that documentary, and yeah, it really bothered me in a lot of different ways.
Jonathan Jacob Major is what his
Yeah.
name was.
Yeah. Crazy, man. Unbelievable. I believe, here we go. I got the Nygaard video. Let's see which one works. We'll go with this one. Come on. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that one.
Investing in it's called SCNT, which takes the egg of a young, perfect woman specimen, takes the egg and takes out the nucleus and puts our DNA in the nucleus. It just go ahead and take it out.
A4?
Huh?
Jesus.
Yeah, and this is part of this genetic greatness that we don't see in any other race on the planet. These curvy, sexy black women from Africa. Negroes have a kind of a monopoly on this genetic perfection, and we want some of that. So, girls, for $100, we will pay you for your egg.
$100?
So how much do you want for it? Let's bid. I bid $500. Whatever I bid, you can outbid me. $60,000 for the eggs. Yeah. If you have abortion, that's very valuable. Umbilical cord, placenta, in your period blood is so rich with stem cells. When you regard it as waste, then it actually should be. It should be captured as recycled, and it should go to waste. It's life for somebody else. It's life for mankind. The best eggs are 60 to 18 years old. Those are the best eggs. As you get older, your eggs get weaker.
Thank you.
So you may not be our top candidate.
No, that's fine. I'm out with my business anyway.
Wow.
Wow.
So there you go. Between 16 and 18. That's the age he said. So
It's so hard to watch that. It's so awful.
It is.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is.
I've seen it before, and it's like, and you see like the expressions on those girls' faces.
yeah, they're like, what did we get? What kind of talk did we get into here?
Horrified.
Well, and those guys don't look like friendly guys either. They look like guys that would make you very uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter
I
Nygaard.
feel like you can just tell when someone's like evil and they've been evil for a long time. I honest to God feel like it does something to your physical appearance. I mean, just look at old pictures of John D. Rockefeller before he died when he was like 90. He looks like a fucking demon.
True.
Like,
Absolutely.
it's spooky.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think he was like like highly syphilitic too. I think that like, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think that really like contorted his.
Buddy, why are you so rude to these old guys? Just kidding. Fuck
You
that
know,
guy.
that's the, yeah.
Oh
Yeah, I
God,
think
yeah.
I think that's like what, you know, what caused all of the distortion of his face was this syphilis. But that's the origin of the term big wig, you know, like, oh, he's a big wig, was because these like syphilitic old men, you know, they would like, their heads would get all big and their hair would fall out, and then they'd have to like have, you know,
Really?
like these wigs made. Yeah, and you can tell in that picture that he's definitely wearing a hairpiece.
Yeah, that's
Rockefeller.
definitely a toupee.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I
And
thought bigwig was those big powder wigs that like old like English nobility would wear. You know,
I mean,
with
you know,
the
hair.
it may have something
Yeah.
to do with that too. But like from what I've been told, and you know, maybe this is like, you know, fallacious, but that like it came from you know, guys that had you know, like the effects of like syphilis, and that they needed
Huh.
like, you know, wigs made. They were big wigs because they had
Yeah.
like, you know, big bulging heads from the.
Here, I
Have you
wanna-
seen the pictures of Epstein where he's got like the big sores on his mouth and stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was like
No.
Yes.
yeah, he had like a resistant strain of gonorrhea, and he was sending pictures to his doctor. That's why he's like, there's one where he's like, he's like showing his doctor.
Oh, I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, I haven't.
It's-
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because
Oh,
he
it's
had a
horrifying.
really antibiotic resistant. Yeah, he had a really bad form of gonorrhea that was resistant to antibiotics. That he
Yeah, do you have those by any chance?
not right offhand, no.
That's okay.
Let me see if I can Google.
You don't want to
Epstein
see.
gonorrhea.
Oh my God.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
I might get
gross.
some weird.
Kind of want to see it. If you can't find it, that's cool. But take a quick peek. In the meantime, I'm going to pull this up because this is something that we were talking about when it came to anesthetics and stuff. So in the Epstein files, there's a lot of photos of people like sleeping or passed out. And yeah, why don't you just share what you told me earlier, Habsburg, what your thought on that is?
Well, like this is a quote from one of the emails from Hammeroff. He says, anesthetic molecules selectively erase consciousness, sparing non-conscious brain activities. However, the mechanism by which they do so remains unknown. So, I mean, and this is, you know, the guy who's, you know, the head of the Center for Consciousness Studies. You know, I think that, you know, what they're talking about doing is like shutting off your conscious brain and, you know, using like the, you know, the fact that like you still have access to the unconscious brain to, you know, like program people's minds, you know, to either like, you know, put, you know, like implant thoughts or to extract information, you know, like, you know, like, you know, being able to like coerce people, you know, to like, you know, say things that would like bypass their normal like conscious filters. I don't know, you know, like I think that that's, you know, largely one of the reasons that they're so interested in studying anesthesia as relates to consciousness, because that's how you like, you know, potentially control people's minds.
Yeah.
So, and to me, that's, you know, kind of specifically what they're saying right there when you know, he's saying, yeah, it shuts off the conscious mind, but you still have access to, you know, these like unconscious, you know, mechanisms. And so it's like when I started digging into this Hammeroff guy, I mean, it's we could probably do like a whole episode on this guy and what he's involved with and what he's doing. It is really, really bizarre. And you know, like he, you know, like he definitely got caught. I mean, you know, like everybody in his whole organization was connected to Epstein. He had to cancel his conference.
Yeah, wild. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's some photos of people passed out. Whoops! How did that get in there?
Oh, good grief.
Oh, my mistake. Whoops!
Ugh.
They're all freaking Epstein's travel photos. My bad. But yeah, you get the point.
You know, those could just be, you know, I mean, most of them are on a plane. They could
Yeah.
just legitimately be sleeping on a plane. There is something to the programming of the unconscious mind. You know, Hadsburg, you've talked a lot about MK Ultra, and you know, you read the original MK Ultra documents. They talk about substances. They want to get. Oh, we lose Jordan. They wanted
Yeah,
to.
we'll tell you.
You know, keep going.
They wanted to find substances that were all kinds of uses, not only mind control, but to produce euphoria. To
Mhm.
you know, there was a real explosion at that time of, you know, designer drugs, and I think it's where LSD came from. I think that's where MDMA came from. Truth serums, you know, sodium pentothal, that kind of stuff. And there's probably a lot of things that we don't even know about that they developed in that. So there is definitely something to those substances. Those specific pictures, in my opinion, being that they're all on the plane, I think they're probably just sleeping on the plane. But
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
all on
I don't
we're all on
know
a
that. Right. I mean, I don't know that those pictures are necessarily indicative of what I'm talking about, but you know, I think that to your point, I think that this is what they're doing, and I think that that is, you know, like what MK Ultra is, and I guess, you know, my point being to, like, you know, tie it all together is I think that, yeah, I mean, Epstein was involved in sexual blackmail and child trafficking. He was involved in, you know, genetic engineering and transhumanism, and, you know, like also this MK Ultra, you know, like mind control. So I mean, there's just so many facets of what this, you know, operation was connected to. And, you know, I mean, he wasn't obviously the head of anything, but, you know, he, like you said, he was a connector between all of these different worlds. And, you know, the pink liquid, yes, didn't we talk about that pink liquid in one of our episodes in
I
the
think we
gate
got into it a
program?
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we should be trying to, you know, see if they talk about pink liquid in the Epstein files. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I mean, I think that all of these, you know, different things, you know, really like connect on one another. And when you, you know, and that's why I did bring up like the whole thing with Ronnie Stanley, who, you know, who was like, you know, the common law wife of Owsley Stanley, who was definitely, you know, running like an operation, you know, with LSD, like being at Columbia in the dental department with Epstein's dentist and having the same, you know, like, you know, professor mentor as Karina Shuliak. Like that's how, you know, deeply, you know, these worlds are connected. I mean, it's crazy to me. And there are like other, like Yosha Bach, who is at the MIT Media Lab. There's a really creepy, and he also is part of Hammeroff's Science of Consciousness conference. But Yosha Bach wrote this really creepy email to Epstein talking about using all these different drugs to there are many ways in which we can try to knock out denial as a coping behavior. You know, talking about like mind programming. We can increase awareness and familiarity with meditation, hypnosis, LSD, psychoanalysis. We can reduce the anxiety that made the denial necessary with MDMA, benzodiazepines, eliminate mechanisms responsible for fear, blocking or lesioning of the amygdala, like actually like, you know, putting lesions on a person's brain. I mean, it's really crazy. Reduce the pain produced by the anxiety, grief with opiates, dissociate situation representation and pain response with ketamine, direct attention, and so on. I'm no psychiatrist, so my list is quite short, but each method of knockout uses different mechanisms and will probably have different effects on the likelihood of depression, risk-taking, productivity, etc., because self-deception involves so many parts of the mind. So, like, yeah, I mean, they're definitely talking about using, you know, like a vast array of, like, you know, different drugs to control people's minds and to, you know, change the way they think, you know. And these are, again, these people are all, you know, connected. It's, you know, that was Yosha Bach, but, you know, he was part of this, you know, this consciousness, you know, conference, and, you know, with Himroff, and, you know, they're all just sort of like one big globular network of bad guys.
Dark sciences, yeah, people that are into the dark sciences kind of thing.
Dude. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, it's all about control, isn't it? You know, it's, you know, they're just like wanting to, you know, control, you know, what people do, what people think, you know, like how people, you know, genetically exist. I mean,
It could definitely be said that Epstein would be someone who is interested in exploring scientific topics that are outside the Overton window, things that mainstream universities and research institutes wouldn't touch, but like maybe some of these more unethical scientists, psychologists would want to get into. They would probably go to somebody like an Epstein for that. And I think Habsburg, some of your research there is showing that these connections, and we're not going to get a real clear picture from the files. We're just going to get little bits and hints of, you know, we're not going to, and Epstein's really good at knowing what not to put down in writing. I mean, you read the files, I don't want to talk about this. Call me. This isn't a conversation for email. You know, somebody, who was it? It was someone that had a part ownership in the Giants, the New York Giants, asked Epstein if hey, is this girl a working girl and this and that, and I really like this last one. And Epstein's like, you know, settle down, Sparky, basically, like, call me, don't talk about this over email, you know. So he's very good at not putting incriminating shit down in writing.
I know one of the people that was asking about a girl being a prostitute was Jonathan Farkas, who is the husband of what's her name? Summers Farkas, I think. She's like Trump's ambassador to Malta. He is the one who introduced Adam Wyden, Ron Wyden's son, to Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't know if we have a couple more minutes, but, you know, I wanted to follow up with that.
I'm good to keep going until you guys are done. So as long as Adam's good and you're good, then yeah, go for it, buddy.
Because that was something, you know, I live in Oregon, and, you know, Ron Wyden is our senior senator here, and I mean, he's a total ghoul. I mean, like, really one of the real bad guys. But he is like the head of the, you know, Senate Finance Committee, you know, like, investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and all of his, like, financial connections. When the latest, you know, document, you know, drop of the Epstein files came out, that was like the first thing I looked for was Wyden, and it turns out Ron Wyden's son, Adam Wyden, was going and, like, meeting at Jeffrey Epstein's apartment in New York to, like, solicit an investment into his management fund. Is that
interesting?
Yeah, ADW fund. And so, but Ron Wyden, like, had not acknowledged it. I just found out that, like, a couple days ago in the Oregonian in our paper here, that they actually, like, brought this to, and as far as I know, and I'm not trying to, like, you know, toot my own horn, but I think that I'm, like, the first person that, you know, like, publicly, you know, like, acknowledged that, you know, Adam Wyden was having meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, and it took, like, you know, 6 weeks, and finally Ron Wyden was approached by, you know, our local media, and he said that he wouldn't comment on that. But, you know, this is the guy who's, you know, he's leading the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's financial connections without being willing to acknowledge that his own son was seeking an investment. And we don't know if Epstein did or did not make this investment with Adam Wyden. I mean, he may have. Adam Wyden was looking for like 500,000 from him, I think, something like that. And he sent him like, the investment prospectus for his fund. And I mean, he had, if you look up Adam Wyden in the Epstein files, like there's, a ton of documentation of their meeting in person. This was in either 2017 or 2018. At Epstein's house in 2017 in New York. And, then like follow up email saying like, oh, I'm sending you over all the documents, for you to be able to like make, an investment in my fund. And like, it's just unbelievable that Ron Wyden can get away with just being like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that at all. Like there's no conflict of interest. Like there's no, like breach of ethics, for him not, like disclosing this as he's, leading this, the highest level investigation into Epstein's, financial crimes and connections, that his son, had this connection. I mean, it's mind blowing. And it's totally like, it's just totally evil. So I thought I would mention that, and that he did finally, looks like, about 10 days ago, in the Oregonian did get questioned and did acknowledge that like he knew of it, but that he wasn't going to comment on it. So.
Wow. Yeah. And I know Wyden, he's one of the, I don't know what he ranks, but he's one of the top insider trading senators.
Yeah.
As far as his stock portfolio is, it's rivals like Pelosi's.
Yeah.
How much he's and the finances. That's going to be really and Jordan, we talked about this last time, but with the gap in his arrest and the raids on his island and the fact that Zorro was never raided, the financial information is going to be the only real unaltered evidence that we have left of Epstein's, because you can't get rid of bank transactions. They're there, and that kind of stuff. If we ever see, like Wyden talked about on the Senate floor, documents detailing hundreds of millions of dollars flowing from Epstein's accounts to Russian banks and this kind of stuff. I mean, that's going to be really the only juicy stuff that we have left.
Yeah, I mean, but I think there's so, again, like if he, we were talking about him being like a connector, and with all of these like researchers and institutes and stuff, like same thing with the money. I mean, he was like this financial, connector, to so many people, and so many of these like, scientific networks, like the funding and the money that he was like moving around on their behalf too. So
yeah, he was really good at making money in nefarious ways and hiding it, money laundering, tax avoidance. I mean, and that's why when people say
Yep.
Epstein was only worth 600 million or whatever, it's like, okay, 400 million of that was just his property. Like there's probably accounts that Epstein had that we never, shell companies, accounts in other people's names. I mean, he probably had money all over the place that we'll just never know.
well, and he
that was
had
his
like
real specialty.
totally. I mean, he had not only that. I mean, he had like unrestricted access to all of Les Wexner's money. I mean, like just for example, you know what I mean?
And he was making investments for him too.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I mean, he had legal, access to like everything. He was like, he was his proxy. So, I mean, like that, forget what Epstein personally had. I mean, he had, $3-4 billion of Wexner's to just play around with and do anything he wanted with.
So, one other thing before we start wrapping up, in the comments we had this, I saved it, so I wanted to bring it up. So Epstein negotiated a contract with CIA to move clandestine airline used in Iran-Contra scandal to Ohio, according to new files. According to Benz, which might be Mike Benz, Epstein was the authorized signatory on a deal that moved the airline's operations from Miami to a military base in Columbus, Ohio. Habsburg, you are nodding. Are you up on that one?
I'm pretty sure that what he's talking about is called Southern Airlines, and this was like basically a CIA like front company that operated this airline that was doing like Iran Contra ops, and Les Wexner bought it as like a private, like air service for his companies, for like the Limited and Victoria's Secret and all that. Like that's how they bought this, CIA airline to like use as their corporate, transport. So,
Okay.
pretty crazy, but I believe
Yeah.
it's called Southern Air or Southern Air Transport, something like that.
Okay, interesting. One other thing I wanted to mention. Last show I did with William Ramsey, we talked about like an Eyes Wide Shut connection to the old Epstein thing, and then he showed me this on eBay, and I ended up buying it. So it's a Hello magazine, and it's got Alice on it, aka Nicole Kidman from Eyes Wide Shut, and the Duke of York, former Prince Andrew on it. So
Okay.
very interesting, very interesting. For those who know, you know. All right, guys. This was awesome, man. I learned a lot of different stuff. I'm sure everyone else did. I appreciate everyone's time. Before we get going, though, quickly, I know you guys have a long, busy day, so I apologize for taking up your time. Adam, let everyone know where they can find you, my friend.
youtube.com/@the-truth-desk, same handle on X. I just got a new documentary out, Jordan, that we're going to talk about in a few days on false flags, 9/11 being an inside job, and then every other false flag that the U.S. and deception starting wars that the U.S. has been involved in, from World War I, II, Vietnam, First Gulf War. Also a bunch of Epstein content out there, including the only comprehensive video on Epstein's drone footage that we have. So
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, definitely check out his stuff because it's great. I love it.
appreciate
I enjoy your videos quite a bit, actually. So it's a pleasure having you on and working with you. And
you as well.
I'm definitely going to enjoy our talk on the 20th. Habsburg, where can everyone find you, my friend?
I just, have a Twitter page. It's at accountable to me, Habsburg Jawlly West. Just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and like coming on here with Jordan, and we're doing some cool stuff. So
yeah, man, absolutely, a lot of good stuff in the future.
We did a fun show on Friday on JJ Vance's Operation GCD. If anybody feels so inclined, you can check that out on his channel too. That was fun.
Yeah, that was good, man. All right, guys, thank you. Thanks again, of course, to all the listeners, viewers, watchers, supporters, subscribers. Please subscribe to the Divulgence Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And check the episode description for links and information for with our affiliations. And stay tuned. We got a lot of more great episodes coming. But until then, take care. Adam, Habsburg, thanks again, guys. This was great. So let's do more of this.
Awesome.
For sure.
Thanks.
Okay, peace, guys.